Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the second session in the CSE Gen series, Educator's Guide to Environmental Studies. We'll just wait for a minute for everybody else to join, and then we'll start the session. So we are also live streaming this session in case any one of you or somebody you know is not able to join. You could probably ask them to watch the live stream. We'll post the link for the live stream in the chat box. Okay, I think we can start now. So once again, a very warm welcome to the CSE series, Environmentally Speaking. And this is part 2 of our very special series that we have designed for our educators. That is called the Educator's Guide to Environmental Studies. My name is Sakshi, and I am a part of the Environment Education Unit at CSE. So I understand that many of you were there for our last session that was teaching climate resilience. Could we get a quick show of hands? How many of you were there for the last session? Maybe a quick thumbs up, or you could just raise your hand so that we know how many of you were there for the last session. Okay, I can see a few responses. So those of you who were there already know about this series. Everybody who's joining us for the first time today, let me quickly introduce the series to you and the Green Educators Network, or what we are calling GEN. So this 3-session series was born out of the aim to address the gap in translating knowledge that exists within the domain into classroom teaching strategies, particularly in the case of environment education. So we kept doing a lot of sessions, and we thought that it might be a good idea to also link these to what resources, what strategies can be taken in the classroom. So in the first session, we address the issue of climate action and how it can be used in the classroom. So what are the resources? What are the teaching strategies, pedagogic strategies, all of that. Now, today we have the second session in the series that's called Building Sustainable Campuses. And those of you who have seen the announcements would probably know that we're talking about what is a green campus and what are the crucial elements to it. Let me come back to it in a bit. And this is a 3-session series. So the third and final session would be held in August, and it's titled SDGs, a Teaching Guide. So, as the name probably suggests, we will be talking about SDGs and how they form an overarching framework for sustainable and equitable development. And it will also help you gain insights on India's performance on the SDGs and how you can integrate it into your classroom. So, this is a little bit about the series, and we hope that these discussions allow you to integrate environment education better into your classrooms, and you get some resources handy that will be beneficial for your classroom teaching. Um, Now, we will also post the link for the series page in the chat box. Please keep an eye on the page for further sessions, because participants who attend all 3 sessions will be eligible for certificates. However, okay, next, let me introduce you to this network that we are calling the Green Educators Network, or GEN. So it is a community of educators who teach environment-related courses in different universities across the country and are committed towards the cause of equitable and sustainable development. As GEN members, educators work actively towards nurturing the skills and knowledge that they feel can contribute towards this goal of sustainable development. So registration to the network is completely free, and we regularly organize a variety of events for our network members. We also give them specific perks. Like last month, we organized an internship program for our network members and asked them to nominate students who would be interning with us here at CSE. So if you're not a Gen member, you can join the network by filling out a simple form, and by joining the network, you'll get access to all our resources, all our further events and activities, as well as you would get a chance to contribute to our newsletter. So we'll post the link for the membership form in the chat box. You can just fill out that form and become a part of our network. I think that's enough background. Now, let's come to the session for which we are here today. So, today's session is based on the theme that will delve into the heart of this buzzword that we keep hearing: sustainability. We have with us CSE expert Sugeet Grover, who is a part of the Sustainable Habitat team at CSE. And having worked with over 100 institutions, he brings with him a wealth of insights and experiences that he will use to help us understand what it truly means to be a sustainable institution, and what can you do as educators to involve your students in this journey of creating a sustainable institution or making your institution more sustainable. In addition, we have a special feature today, a panel discussion with 3 members of our Gen community who will share their experiences, their insights on their journey towards making their campuses green or sustainable. So let me quickly introduce the speaker and the panelists, and we can get started with the session. So our speaker for the day, as I said, is Sugeet. Sugeet Grover is a program manager at the Sustainable Habitat Program at CSE. He's completed his Masters of Science from the Polytechnic University of Milan, Italy, in sustainable architecture in multi-scale projects. His interest areas include building physics, sustainable urbanization, walkability, and overall reduction in carbon footprint. His current research work relates to themes of thermal comfort, energy efficiency, circular economy, and a lot more, which probably would be difficult to put in such a short period of time. For the panel discussion, we have with us Dr. Nisar Khan, who is a professor at the Faculty of Architecture and Acoustics. He specializes in the urban heritage and is the coordinator of the Masters in Architecture program in urban regeneration at Jamia Millia Islamia. Dr. Sandesh Yadav from the same university is an assistant professor at the Center for Disaster Management. He holds a PhD in geography, and his research interests include climate change, disaster management, urban environment, etc. He has several research papers and books to his name, and he's teaching MSc Disaster Management and Climate Sustainability. Next, we have with us Dr. Mebari Dorfang, who is a faculty in the Department of Zoology, St. Edmund's College, Assam. She's been a Gen member since 2019, and she's jointly organized the webinar on Northeast Regional Dialogue on Green Campus in 2020 with us. Her academic interests include herpetology, ethology, and conservation biology. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Thank you, Sandesh sir, Nisar sir, Mebari ma'am, and we look forward to hearing from you. Thank you for joining us, Sugeet. I hand over the floor to you now.
Thanks a lot, Sakshi. Let me start with sharing my screen. Sakshi, let me know when the screen becomes visible.
Yes, it is visible now, Sugeet.
Thanks a lot. Right. So thanks a lot, Sakshi, for introducing me. I'm Sugeet Grover. I work as a program manager for the Sustainable Habitat Program and with the Center for Science and Environment. And since many years now, we started in about 2017, we've been going through this Green Campus program for which one of this is a continuation of that, which we are calling the Building Sustainable Campuses. I think somebody's mic is on. Maybe Sakshi can check them whenever that happens.
Vidyanath sir, could I please request you to mute yourself? Thank you.
So going ahead, let me just introduce by saying how sustainable development goals and campuses have a big relationship. And we recognize that all of these goals that we're talking about, which is goal number 3, 7, 8, 9, 11, 12, 13, all can also be applied to sustainable educational campuses as well. And therefore, you have a big part to play. Just a very brief introduction to the basic history of how we started. This was the first workshop in 2017. We were doing physical workshops back then. We started building a Green Educators Network. Some of you who are attending perhaps are also present in these photographs. We did nationwide engagements across the country, some in South India, some in North India, and we also did some in our own campus, which is the AATI campus, and I wish all of you get to visit that once. This is again in 2020 when we were doing physical workshops. After that, of course, COVID came, and then we had to shift to online workshops. But during that journey, we also came up with a few publications. So the first one we came out was called Green Sense Educational Campus Inventory, and then we did a whole lot of. Then we sort of accumulated the knowledge that we had received from different education networks, different educational campuses. And then we came up with a publication called a Green Campus Compendium, which had a lot of information which had 5 case studies of different campuses and all the green initiatives that we had done. After we came up with these 5, a lot of campuses came to us and said, look, we are also planning a lot of more work, and we also want to contribute, and we also want to understand that what else can be done. And so the next thing we did was we came up with a questionnaire. We tried to understand from the educational campuses that what green steps are they planning and what is the thing that they sort of need from us. We came up with a publication called a Green Campus Movement, which had a combination of let's say, we basically gave them a questionnaire and they answered what are the steps that they have taken and what are the steps they're about to take. And this is all captured in the Green Campus Movement, and this is freely downloadable at CSE website. And these are all the campuses and colleges that actually participated during this survey and making of this publication. So let me begin with that, and let me just tell, before I start, I want this to be very interactive. Perhaps I won't even actually go ahead if it's not interactive enough. If some of you want to answer in the chat box, that's fine. If sometimes I might ask you to actually unmute yourself and then tell me the answer, I hope you will be able to do it. So there are 5 themes in which we usually talk about, which is land, energy, water, waste, and basically these 5 themes, they have their own subheads, and we would like to understand what people are interested in. So let me start off with asking. We did a survey, and these were the 5 things we suggested. And we asked the campuses, okay, these are the 5 things you can do. What do you think is the most likely? What has the most likelihood that you will do? Is it enhancing tree cover? Is it adopting green gardening strategies? Is it controlling soil erosion? Is it improving land permeability? Or is it increasing number of area of kitchen garden? So I'll start off with that. I'll just answer, is it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? What do you think would be the strategy that most campuses are willing to adopt? What do you think people would have answered, or campuses would have answered? So I believe you can just write in the chat box, is it 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5? And Sakshi, whenever those answers, considerable number of answers come, you can probably read it out to me.
Yeah, sure.
let me ask the question again. Amongst these 5 strategies, which one has the most likelihood for campuses to adopt? Which one do you think campuses would be like, okay, we can do this. I think we can do this and we should do this.
So, Sugit, most of the responses include 1 as an answer.
All right.
Enhancing tree cover. We do have a mix of all the 5 options, but most
Okay.
of them are 1.
Most have answered as 1.
Yeah.
Let me just open the chat box myself. All right. Most have answered 1. A few have answered 3. Mr. Sajid has answered none as well. And some have answered 5 as well. 1 and 4. All right. So, yes, in fact, most people said that it's actually the answer number 1, which they are more likely to adopt, which is enhancing tree cover by plantation drives. The second most received answer was adopting green gardening strategies like mulching, drip irrigation, etc. So let me start off with understanding, okay, how does green gardening strategy actually help? So just looking at this example, looking at this image, we know that this area has a 7-degree higher temperature as compared to the rest of the city. Any reasons why that would have happened? I think no. Can anybody just point out what are the reasons why this sort of image, why this sort of an area would have a higher temperature than rest of the city? All right. So somebody has said lack of trees, no green cover, heat island effect. All right. Absolutely. All of those things. And we understand that trees become one very important and major factor, how that can be sort of how trees can actually mitigate this from happening. Now, why is that so? Let me give you an example. Urban heat island effect is a phenomena in which the urban areas sort of start trapping heat and become much more warmer than the rest of the city, or let's say the rest of the areas around the city, which have much more plantation and vegetation. And this trapped heat is what we experience in urban day-to-day lives in urban areas. And one thing how we can sort of improve that, or campuses can improve that, is by increasing their tree density. So we have a lot of colleges that came up and said, look, we already actually do either plantation drives, or sometimes we actually have events in which we give away plants or trees to be put. But regular plantation drives within the campus actually becomes one very important factor that should be followed. The second thing is trees. Now the question is, why are trees actually helping us cool our environment? So this image sort of tells us a very good story. You can see there are certain colored dots here. I don't know if I'm able to share this. Let me see if I'll be able to share this. Okay, that. Give me a second. All right. Just actually, if you can tell me if you can see my pointer.
Yes, yes.
You can see my pointer.
Yeah.
So you would see these people right here, and you can sort of say that these people are in shade, and therefore the surrounding temperature, surface temperature is much less. What you see behind the tree is much more because there is no shade. So the first way in which trees are actually cooling down our environment is because of shade. And this doesn't just work on ground, but if you ever come to a campus, you can also see the effect of a tree on the walls of the campus or the building itself as well. The other way that the tree cools us down is because of something called evapotranspiration. What is happening is that the tree roots are actually taking up the water in the soil, and then evaporation takes place through the leaves, and therefore it cools down the environment. Now, this also tells us that areas which are completely paved, which are just absorbing heat and no evapotranspiration is taking place, or no evaporation is taking place, would actually trap a lot more heat. And therefore, we also encourage campuses to be as less or as more permeable as possible. So this is an example of Don Bosco in Guwahati. where some of the pathways have been converted into permeable pavement. So what one should be doing is that as much pervious open spaces should be made rather than impervious open spaces. One of the reasons is that less amount of material on the ground means less amount of heat gets absorbed by them and less amount of heat gets trapped. The other reason is also the more the water gets absorbed by the soil and more water is allowed to evaporate, it actually will cool down the ambient air itself as well. Of course, there are other reasons why one should be planting trees, which is because of carbon sequestration or improving the infiltration of groundwater recharge. And another way we have been able to do that in our own campus at ATI is by you can see this sort of a swale feature that you can actually see on your screen. And what is happening is that um, we understood that this is where the water will rush down when rains happen. And so we strengthen the soil with the use of plantation. So also this can also be used for arresting soil erosion, which becomes another thing that campuses can do to be able to incorporate in their campuses to be able to make them more sustainable. Another important thing that we have tried in our campus, and perhaps a lot of campuses can also try, is kitchen garden or agroforestry, which means that you can actually produce a little bit of your food inside your campus so that some of the you don't have to transport food from outside and you have much better control over the pesticides that are actually very prevalent in agriculture nowadays. This agroforestry or kitchen garden also becomes a very important thing that campuses can use to teach their own students how they can connect with their own food. So if you have a piece of land, I suggest that this is a way you can go forward with. The third thing is another perhaps thing that campuses can adopt is green gardening strategy. Now, what does that mean? Can anybody tell me what mulching is? Any ideas what mulching does? Let me give you an example. A mulching is, let's say, a bed of.
It's the cover of the soil, especially the farmers use to uncover the soil so that the erosion will not happen, and it is protected from the sunlight and the other things too.
Okay, absolutely. So it's protecting the sunlight. There are multiple good things that are happening. Basically, what you do is you have plantation, and around that plantation, let's say you're growing any sort of a crop, any sort of even in your own kitchen garden in your campus, you might put mulch around the plants so that the soil does not remain bare and actually gets covered with something like a dried leaf, wood shavings, anything like that can be used. It becomes it's organic matter. It breaks down and actually goes back to the soil. It gets protected from the direct sun. And another important thing happens is that it creates a buffer above the soil so that the evaporation that is going to take away the water from the soil does not actually take place. Another very important thing is that there are many earthworms or some other insects that actually live inside your soil. What it does is it gives them a home so that these, let's say, the earthworm is very beneficial in breaking down your organic matter as well as uh, allowing more amount of oxygen to mix in the soil. So it keeps the soil loose, which is beneficial for the tree roots and the plant roots to actually go inside. So all of these things can actually be used in your campus and your students can also become part of it. This is an example of a drip irrigation system being used, which again is a green gardening strategy, which is able to bring down water consumption in your campus. Now, let me now switch to energy from land. And let me ask you among all of these strategies, strategy 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which one do you think campuses were most willing to adopt? Is it increasing renewable energy penetration? Is it replacing old fixtures with efficient ones? Is it awareness campaigns for campus users? Is it reducing dependency on air conditioning? Or is it working on passive design? What do you think most campuses are willing to adopt? Sasha, you can tell me when the answers start coming.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the answers now.
Sure.
So again, a lot of people have answered 1
Okay.
and 2 and 3 as well. So the most answers would be the first one, and
Okay.
then 2 and 3 as well. Some of them.
Absolutely. Okay. Thanks a lot, Sakshi, for that. Which is no surprise that most people did answer that, increasing renewable energy penetration in campus would be the first thing they or the most likely they're willing to do, which is something which is also surprising because something as simple as awareness dissemination campaigns amongst campus users can also be a very effective way of actually reducing your energy requirements. Replacing old electrical fixtures with more efficient ones can also work, although that will also require a little bit of capital. And again, increasing your renewable energy penetration will also require a lot of capital to be put into place to be able to do this. So I'm going to talk about something called passive design, which means that rather than taking the step that the energy you're consuming should be replaced by the renewable energy, I'm going to say first step should be to reduce the amount of energy that you actually utilize in your campus in the first step. And for that, I'm going to talk a little bit of passive design. So unfortunately, some of our campuses look like this, which are glass buildings, which are absolutely inappropriate for the climate we actually live in. Most of the places in India, perhaps with the exception of Ladakh or Leh, most of the places are actually, in most places, this would not be an advisable thing. And campuses, if designed beautifully, well thought of, they can also look like the images that you have on the left, which is perhaps much more appealing and more climately appropriate to our climatic zone. There are 3 steps that we can perhaps follow in terms of designing our buildings according to passive design principles: orientation, shading, and window wall ratio, which means we should have most of our buildings facing either towards north or south. Our shading has to be appropriate to the direction that the window is facing, and the window wall ratio should be kept roughly to about 30% and not much more than that. In fact, the codes now say, the energy conservation building code sort of imply that the window to wall ratio cannot be more than 40%, or should not exceed 40% in most cases. And this has really been a journey to actually get the code to actually speak about 40%, because previously the code only talked about the window to wall ratio can be up to 60%. Because as much glass that we start putting into buildings, we receive heat as well as amount of light that actually comes in. So it would be best to actually optimize the amount of glass that we have in our building. So optimization is really the key. And can anybody just answer what happens if we have a high window to wall ratio? What if a lot of glass is present in our buildings? Anything that's wrong with it, that idea? Anybody can unmute themselves and tell me.
Less insulation, so
Sorry?
more heat penetrating. The walls serve as an insulator. The walls act as an insulator.
Okay. So, anybody else? Any more answers? I think there are some in the chat box. Okay.
Yeah.
Some people have said heat buildup. It makes it hot and acts as greenhouse effect. And somebody has also said that more light is less consumption of energy. Somebody has said more light is equals less consumption of energy. And somebody has said heating effect is more. Actually, I would like to burst this myth right now. Perhaps I have an image that actually shows this. Do you see this image right in front of you? Yeah. Can you see that this is a glass building? And do you notice something interesting about this glass building? perhaps what you can notice is that there are all the light shading devices or light cutting down devices are actually on when you see these buildings. Are you able to observe that most of the blinds are actually down? Okay, so what is happening right here is that there is absolutely too much light actually coming inside your building. And too much light means there is glare. So your own screen, if you're keeping it right in front of the window, you might not be able to see the screen properly. Most of us are working in our in front of our desktops, laptops, and you might not be able to see the screen. So there is actually a range above which, if you have too much light, you will feel uncomfortable. And especially if there is direct sunlight or direct sunlight actually coming in, right, and you're sitting next to the window, the first thing you'll do is put down the shade so that less amount of light comes in, which means that you will actually put on a lot more artificial light in the glass buildings. The second reason, of course, is that you will have greenhouse effect if your building is not well protected, and which is a sad reality in our urban lives now. There are a lot of the buildings actually being built are using a lot of glass, which is actually trapping heat, as well as because of the too excess light that actually comes in, you actually put off the blinds, because of which you're using artificial light. In both cases, you're actually consuming a lot more energy than you should be using, right? So the best idea, of course, is to have a sun shading device not inside the building, but outside the building, so that you're able to not let the direct sunlight come in. For that, you can also, if you're thinking of making a new campus building or retrofitting the old one, then do think about the appropriate shading, which is actually able to cut down the direct sunlight from coming inside your building. The first step you can take it, of course, minimize the amount of glass you're using and keep it to roughly 30% of the walls, and minimize the amount of direct heat that actually enters your building in summers. If I take the example of interiors, just this image should be able to tell you the story that if you have dark colors inside your room, then what will happen is that a lot of light will not be able to bounce off and will get absorbed by the wall. But in a similar scenario, if you have a very light colored building, a white colored building, a lot of the light will actually get deflected and will get neutralized and actually will feel much better, and you will not need so much artificial lighting in your day spaces. The other thing is that you don't always need to go for very intensive capital expenditure related answers to these questions. Perhaps we can also have simple policy decisions. So let me understand from you, how many of you have air conditioned classrooms? Not staff rooms, but how many of you have air conditioned classrooms? If you can just type in the chat box saying yes. Okay, Dr. Sandesh has said that it's fully air conditioned. Somebody has said not now, but they might need it in the future. And many people have said that there are no air conditions in our classrooms. I'm very happy if you don't have air conditions in your classrooms, but for the people who do, what's wrong with an air conditioner? Of course, there is a higher electricity bill. You have recirculation of air, which during COVID we understood that recirculation of air was one of the reasons why the COVID virus uh, was actually getting penetrated to a lot more spaces. Lack of fresh air, and perhaps one thing that's not talked about enough is that continuous air conditioned spaces actually reduce your tolerance to thermal comfort. So let me give you an example. This is from the National Building Code, and this will actually tell you that if you're in an area, let's say in Ahmedabad, you can take your thermal comfort can be as high as 32 degrees centigrade. But if you're always in an air conditioned space, then your tolerance reduces and you will feel uncomfortable even beyond 26 degrees centigrade. And this should really tell us how harmful the air conditioning is, conditioning, a continuous air conditioned environment is, because it fundamentally reduces the your tolerance to air conditioning, to warmer climates. And this is something we should be against, because we should be more resilient to heat than actually giving it up and saying everything should be air conditioned now. So non-natural environments fundamentally change the way we perceive thermal comfort. Even if you do have air conditioning, I would suggest your answer should not be directly air conditioned, but perhaps first answer should be fan. If fan doesn't work, then use an air conditioning in combination with a fan. And if you're using that, then perhaps maybe your set point can be, let's say, above 26 degrees centigrade. If you can push it to 28 degree or above, then that's absolutely perfect. So that your air conditioning, even if you are using air conditioning, it does not have to work too much. Of course, don't keep it below, let's say, 26 degree or 24 degree centigrade, because every single degree centigrade that you change. So if I put my air conditioning from 25 degrees centigrade to 26 degrees centigrade, I actually reduce my energy consumption by 6%. So every degree is equivalent to 6% energy consumption, and everybody should remember that. So we came up with a publication called The Cooling Web, which we released last year. And if you're looking for designing a new campus, if your campus is actually thinking about new ways of cooling, then there are many examples that we saw in different universities and campuses. For example, NIT Nimrana University is using cooling using the Earth's potential to absorb heat. IIT Gandhinagar in Gujarat is using evaporative cooling because they are in a hot and dry climate. And similarly, Gujarat Vidyapeeth in Ahmedabad is using both. They're using the absorption capacity of the earth as well as water evaporative cooling to be able to cool them down. And I can send a link to people who are interested in this publication so they can see examples of what other campuses are doing to be able to reduce their consumption of air conditioning. This is an example. IIT Gandhinagar is a completely air-conditioned campus. But in areas such as their dining rooms, and they have multiple dining rooms, they prefer evaporative cooling because people are not going to stay for a longer time. They don't have equipment which need cooling. So in some contexts, they're able to use non-air conditioned cooling as well. The last thing we can perhaps do is shift to energy efficient fixtures. There are also certain things which are like controlled, which actually sense that there are people inside or not. So sometimes in the washrooms, people might just switch on their light and forget about it. But there are sensor-based lights which actually can work in a way that they can sense if there are people inside the campus or not, and therefore switch on and off according to that. Now, let me come to water, and if people can answer that amongst 1, 2, 3, or 4, what is the most what is the strategies that most campuses are likely to adopt? Is it awareness campaigns for campus users? Is it enhancing rainwater harvesting? Is it replacing old fixtures with efficient ones? Or is it on-site wastewater treatment that people have chosen to adopt? So rather than giving 3 answers out of the 4, let's stick to maybe 1 or 2 answers. Sakshi, if you could tell me what have people chosen?
Yeah, a lot of people have chosen 2. I think almost everybody has said 2. Then we have all the others in some ratio or the other, but 2 seems to be the dominant choice.
Okay, let's see. Most people, in fact, have answered that they would go for awareness campaigns, followed by option 2, which is enhancing rainwater harvesting. I think all 4 are very, very relevant. Again, awareness campaign, I believe, has a very powerful message, and it's something that can actually involve students as well in their daily day-to-day life, and perhaps they can take these learnings back to their homes as well from the educational campuses. So let's take a very basic idea. There is water. We need to sort of store as much water that actually falls in our campus. So rainwater harvesting. The water intake that actually we take, either we are taking it from bore wells or we are taking it from municipality supplied water, we need to reduce that. And rainwater harvesting will actually help do that. And the water we are throwing out of our campus, which becomes wastewater, if that is something that can be recycled inside our campus or reused in our campus, then the water intake that we take from outside becomes lesser. And that is what our aim should be. So both rainwater harvesting or wastewater treatment actually help us out in this case. And the water out has to be reduced. Again, this is also a thing that we can do. We reduce the amount of water that is actually being sent out of our campus so that we are actually able to recycle. In fact, most of the laws in this country will now encourage us to actually do this and actually be able to recycle our water as much as possible. And the third thing is, of course, the water that we actually consume has to be in a more efficient way. And the most easiest way to do is that have an audit of your campus, find out what all kind of fixtures do you have and what kind of a fixtures that actually can go on it. So there is something called low flow restrictors or aerators, which are actually able to bring down the amount of water that is actually coming out of your taps or faucets. Again, another interesting thing is that there are there are many faucets which are also automatic. So in places where there is a likelihood that people might just keep the water flow running, you might actually use automatic faucet so that people just put their hand, the water goes, and it actually stops after that. An example of this is also used in our own campus at ATI, where we have used a self-tapping tap, which means that we just not a self-tapping one, but a tapping one, which means that we press it, the water comes out for let's say a few seconds, maybe 3 to 5 seconds, and then it pops back again and it's gone. So there is no chance for people to be actually wasting water by just keeping the faucet running. And that's something, if you're retrofitting your campus or you're bringing new buildings, that is something you can actually do inside your campus. And awareness campaigns is something that everybody can start right now. Just a poster in every room, any washroom, just reminding people, that, okay, so and so much amount of tap running is actually consuming so much and so much amount of water. And what does that mean? And how many people are actually not able to use that water? It's something that people are able to see every day, and that becomes a part of their daily lives and perhaps awareness, and that is something that they can become aware of. The fourth part here is waste, and again, for this I would again ask people to answer which one of these 4 options is what campuses are more likely to adopt. Is it restricting single-use plastic in campus and paper in office? Is it paper waste recycling? Is it e-waste recycler tie-up, or an on-site biodegradable waste treatment plant? What do you think most campuses would be interested in doing? So somebody has also answered 1 is compulsory in Maharashtra. For that, I would also like to tell that, fortunately, 1 is compulsory in the entire country. Nobody seems to be following it. Very, very few people seem to be following it. So yes, even though one is compulsory, but I would love to know how many of you had made guidelines that your own canteen cannot use single-use plastic, or your own, something like your own. Let's say if you have events in your campus and you're serving food, they cannot use single-use plastic. I would love to know if that is actually being followed by different campuses. So a lot of people have said 1 and 4, which is restricting single-use plastic in campus. And then 4th, which is on-site biodegradable waste treatment, composting. All right, very nice. I think both of them are very, very effective solutions. So let's see how that actually works out. Most people have answered that restricting usage of single-use plastic on campuses is something they're willing to do and would like to do. Easier said than done. I have still not been able to see many campuses which have actually done good job in this. I would love to see more examples of campuses which have done. If you have, then please do tell us. Let us know that you've actually done, and perhaps write a story about the struggle you had to face and how you overcame that. We would love to document it and actually write it down as a story somewhere. The second thing people have said is yes, on-site biodegradable waste treatment through composting, vermicomposting is something they would like to do. And yes, this is perhaps something, again, I'm also emphasizing that composting is something that your students should also get involved into. And there are multiple ways in which campuses can do pit composting, vermicomposting, windrow composting, khamba composting. Actually, windrow composting or pit composting is more likely to be done on a large scale, but something as simple as matka composting or khamba composting can also be done on a smaller scale. So there are these examples that we have seen in multiple places across the country. Can anybody tell me why there are gaps in these bricks? Why do you think there are gaps that have been kept inside these bricks? Absolutely. So a lot of people have answered. A lot of people have actually answered this correctly. It is mainly for aeration. So what is happening is that we want aerobic composting to happening, which means that it should happen in the presence of oxygen rather than not having the oxygen. If you don't have oxygen, then it's very similar to you just throwing the garbage into the landfill. And what happens eventually is that a lot of methane gets produced, which is a very, very potent greenhouse gas. And the other thing happens is that the composting that happens is much, much slower, which is something that we don't want. So we rather prefer aerobic composting to be taking place, which is why these gaps have been kept. And perhaps if you do it correctly, about 6 to 8 weeks, you should be able to see your compost being ready. Let me just see if I have another slide that I could perhaps. All right, no. Then let me also ask this question. What do you think happens in terms of air? What do you think people are likely to adopt? Is it restricting on-campus car usage? Is it mitigation measures for dust control? Is it restricting use or finding alternatives of DG sets? Is it making campus-owned transport electric? Or is it bike sharing schemes? Which one do you think people are likely to adopt?
Five and four are the dominant choices, probably.
5 and 4. Making campus-owned vehicles electric. Okay, that would be wonderful if that happens. And bike sharing schemes. Both of them would be very extremely effective. Perhaps the most effective one out of these would be restricting on-campus car usage. So we also have examples of campuses which have gone and done that. Most people answered that restricting on-campus car usage is what they would like to do, followed by mitigation measures for dust from roads and construction activities. We, in fact, say that the entire campus should be made so that you don't really require a car, but non-motorized transportation such as walking or cycling should be encouraged. Some campuses, such as our Guru Nanak Dev University in Amritsar, have actually taken steps to be able to stop car usage. So private cars are not allowed inside the campus except for the faculty to be going in. We also saw Guru Nanak Dev University taking good steps in terms of public bike sharing schemes that they launched. And now they've also switched to battery operated vehicles, which are running through the campus so that people can actually take care of that. We also see some very interesting examples which go beyond just the campus. For example, this is CPWD's Training Institute in Ghaziabad. And what they do is that there is a bus that actually collects people from 3 different metro stations and comes to the campus. So by this way, last mile connectivity is not an issue, and a lot of people can use the metro. And from the metro, the campus is again about 15 kilometers apart. But the good thing is that the bus now takes care of it, so you don't have to worry about it. And these are good steps that we saw. Even if you're making a pathway for people to walk in, ensure that it's shaded according to your climatic zone. Ensure that it's comfortable for people to walk in. This is a wonderful example on your right, where the path has been segregated from the area where cars are actually moving or fast vehicles are moving. And on your left, again, we see a very good example of a bike path being separated from a pedestrian path, and which is again separated from a high moving vehicular traffic. So all of these things in combination, where we say, all right, non-motorized transportation should really be the key focus and should be something that should be encouraged by your campus, should be done. And again, you have your tree plantation drives that are taking place. Why not combine it with them? Those paths can actually benefit from tree plantation just around that. And awareness campaigns. For example, we saw that some campuses, what they did is they were not able to implement a no private car campus immediately, but they started saying, okay, once in a week, you're not allowed to bring your car. And this is a starting step. You do it for once in a week, and then perhaps you move on to the next steps where you say, okay, maybe once a week changes to 2 times a week, and eventually it becomes your normal day-to-day life. And I think I'll end with this. I think I just saw this today, and I thought this was very interesting to say. And there is, I believe, Darkwing or Nightwing talking to Superman. And they're all, Superman really is somebody who represents the bigger ideas. Global warming is taking place and climate change is taking place, and what will we normal people do? And Superman is saying, oh, I have to save the world. And Darkwing or Nightwing, I forget which this character is, has no superpower, and he says, look, you've saved the world. I am trying to save a few corners of it, corners which your hands are too big to reach. And this is perhaps who we are. Your campuses are those corners of the world that you can save, and perhaps not a bigger policy can perhaps save them. But we ourselves are those Nightwings which don't have superpowers, but can actually save at least those corners which we call our campuses. So with that, I would say thank you, and I would stop my screen share with that.
Thanks a lot, Sugeet, for ending on that wonderful note. And now I think we can start with the panel discussion, wherein we would be hearing from some of our community members, Gen members, how are they implementing sustainability in their own campuses, and how are they involving students in such initiatives. So as I introduced all the speakers earlier, we have with us Dr. Sandesh Yadav from JMI, Dr. Nisar Khan from JMI, and Dr. Mebari from St. Edmunds, Assam. Welcome, everyone.
All right, wonderful. Should I go ahead and ask them a few questions, maybe?
Yeah, sure. Please go ahead.
Okay, so let me start with Dr. Nasar Khan. So, Dr. Nasar, you've been with us since a long time. In fact, I remember you were part of one of the very first meetings that we did on this subject. If I may understand, what are the most impactful changes you have made or plan to make to your campus infrastructure to make it more sustainable? And let me just modify a little bit. I'm going to say not just infrastructure, but again, I would also emphasize it's not just about infrastructure, but also policy decisions that can actually help in bringing about a little bit more sustainability. So, what are the most impactful changes you have made or plan to make in your campus, infrastructure or policy, to make it more sustainable? Dr. Khan.
Thank you, Sugit. I hope I'm audible.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah. So, first of all, very important session, and thank you for having me in this panel discussion. Answering your question, I think it's a very pertinent issue these days in our campuses. Here at Jamia, in which is located in Delhi and located in a city which is facing all the environmental crises that we can imagine of. I think I'll safely say that we are doing our bit when it comes to making our campus sustainable. We have to do many more things, but we have been able to at least achieve some very important things. So I'll start with one of the interventions that was carried out about 4 5 years back, which was making the entire campus installing solar rooftop panels in the entire campus. Now, when we did that, we could achieve the power generation of 2.5 megawatt peak, and we are able to save about 2 crore annually in our electricity spendings because of that. And we can safely imagine that with that spending, with that savings, we are contributing to the environment substantially. That's one important and major intervention that we have done in our campus. The other thing which we have been doing, not recently, but at least for past 20 years, as far as I'm aware, is the installation of rainwater harvesting system in our campus. Now, this we are doing for past many years, and this becomes very important, not just for the campus or within the boundary of the campus. I'll say it helps in the neighborhood as well, because Jamia, those of us who are familiar with, is surrounded by high density unplanned settlements nearby. And when we have that, we can see that there is a depletion of groundwater table, and also there is a poor quality of water that is there. So when we did this rainwater harvesting system, we have installed 17 wells in our campus, which has resulted in an increase of 1 meter in groundwater table in past few years, as far as I am aware. And it has also significantly improved the quality of water as far as its brackishness was concerned. So the saltiness in the water has reduced significantly. So this is something which I'll say there are two major tangible infrastructural improvements that we have carried out. Apart from that, if you ask me about policy level interventions, so we have declared our campus as plastic free. So single use plastic free campus is there. And another thing which I remember I'm remembering is that we have introduced a Bachelor of Vocational Studies in Solar Technology. So right when we made our campus, installed solar rooftops in our campus, we started this course where we are training the students to actually become professionals in installation of the solar rooftops, especially in the residential properties across the country. And we are aware that our government is also promoting this a lot through various schemes, and Prime Minister recently have announced quite a good incentive schemes about that. So we are not just doing it on the campus. We want to enhance the capacity by training these students, and so that they can actually do that. So these are the two, or rather 2-3 things which I readily remember. Apart from that, we also have a composting unit in our campus, which is a very organic composting unit, not a very technology based. So we have a green area within our campus, which we also call as Jamia Forest. So at one of the locations within that campus, we also run our nursery. We have designated an area where we put our organic waste, which is generated from the canteens of the university and the dining halls of the university, and which is made to compost in due course of time. And the same is used as a manure in the nursery, which is located in the very same forest. So these are the few things which I'm readily remembering. Sugit, you are on a mute.
Oh, thanks a lot, Dr. Nisar. I think it's wonderful to understand that the initiative that you took on solar power is actually able to save you electricity bill, and it's very important to understand that some of these measures are not just being done saying, you know what, this is good for the environment, but actually have a economic benefit as well down the line, and that is something that we would love to hear more about. Moving on to maybe Mr. Sandesh, who can sort of also tell us what according to them has been done on their campus. Okay, I don't seem to be able to see Dr. Sandesh in this one. But
Sugit, he entered the waiting room.
okay, till then maybe.
Yeah.
Is he here, or should we switch to Dr. Ms. Mebari?
No, I'm here. Dr. Sandesh
Okay,
Yadav
yeah.
is here.
Sandesh, tell me.
Sorry for the interruption. There was some network issue. I'm really very sorry.
No problem. Go ahead, Sandesh. It's the same question. I would love to understand from you. What are the things that you feel one has done in the? What do you think? Okay, let me ask you a different question. What do you think can be planned in your campus infrastructure? Or let me ask you about policy. What do you think can actually happen in your campus?
First, let me thank to
Sandesh, I think your audio is not audible.
Yeah.
Now,
No, the voice is breaking up. Sandesh, let me ask you to rejoin maybe, and till then let me get Mebari's thing, and then we can perhaps continue with you. Hi, Mebari. I would ask you the same. Again, you've been associated with us since a very long time. What do you think what do you feel something that your campus has done? It's important to remember that your campus is perhaps in a very different context and setting than Dr. Nisar's campus. You have a lot more green area to explore, which are Delhi Heights. I haven't seen a tree since the last 2 days, I think. But you probably have a lot more to explore and a lot more things that are possible. But in a very similar thing, a very different context, a much more difficult site in one way to actually do many more infrastructure projects. So what do you think? Tell me what you feel, which infrastructure things that you've been able to do or you plan to do.
Right. Okay, so good evening, everyone. I am Mebari. And firstly, let me thank CSE New Delhi for inviting me for this panel discussion. And I also thank my co-panelists, Dr. Nisar Khan and Dr. Sandesh Yadav. We are yet to hear from Dr. Yadav, but thank you so much, Dr. Nisar, for sharing your valuable insights. So let me just get to answering the question that you posed here, Sugit. So I am currently affiliated with St. Edmund's College, Shillong, not Guwahati. And coming to our campus, we are in the heart of the city, in the heart of the town rather. We are, in fact, we are this place, Shillong, is usually pretty well known for its very pleasant weather, which of course attracts tourists from all over the country and the world. Um, but there are, in the recent years, as one of your publications in DTE back in 2017, you have highlighted, there was an article on why are we sweating in Shillong. So I read this article and I realized you have highlighted very correctly about the highly fluctuating hot days, hot nights, cold days and cold nights, and which is really impacting most of our educational institution infrastructure. But despite all of this, I think I'll just give you a little bit about our campus profile. We are spread across an area which is approximately 32 acres. We have a green cover, which is now currently, because of developing buildings, we have a green cover of 42.49%. Our built up area is greater than that, which is 46.29, and we have an open space of 11.11%. So when it comes to the impactful changes that we've made in our campus here at St. Edmunds, I'll just sort of highlight some of the things in different parameters. So let me start with the buildings. So like I said, St. Edmunds College is located in the heart of the town, and we experience pleasant weather. But until recently, we have, owing to the temperature changes, we can see we are bearing the brunt of it. And this, of course, our college is a little over 100 years old. And so most of the buildings, as you mentioned, they have been designed having a passive architecture. But now things have to change owing to this temperature changes. And so this temperature change, which is also greatly what is the word? Heightened by our altitude at this place. So here, because of this, our classrooms are now demanding a lot of fans. And so we are yet to take that step towards installing fans in our college. And then when it comes to the laboratories, we have 6 dry and wet labs, which are pretty well maintained by our associate staff. But we are still working on setting up the proper waste water treatment. But of course, we do have in place a plan to invest on planting the water purifying plants such as Tulsi. When it comes to the sports facility in the sports club, we have the playgrounds, they're all pervious open places, right? So we have developed them in order to not disrupt the water retention capacity of the soil. And in these places, we have installed LED lights. And there's very much, whenever our sports club, when the members of the sports club, they attend different games and events, they're encouraged to not use, single-use plastic. And then based on we also have rainwater harvesting in these areas, which are used for watering the fields in the summer. And of course, we have the grass clippings, which can be used for composting. And because of minimum disturbance to the peripheral ecosystem of these playgrounds, we do have a record of a good number of floral and faunal diversity. Coming to our parking facility, we have a good number of parking lots, and we are blessed with having very tall trees that provide us and our vehicles with the right amount of shade. And these are decades-old trees. Communication, we try to communicate more or by exchange of emails so as to reduce our dependency on paper. When it comes to the landscape, we encourage green gardening. And just recently, we had an initiative by the Department of Botany, wherein they have come up with, there's a designated place that is called the Eco Stretch. And this Eco Stretch was basically established or opened for eco-friendly recreational purposes to enjoy the aesthetic value of biodiversity. We have installed infiltration trenches in order to decrease the volume and speed of surface water runoff. And we are planning to have or increase more of our green paving. Coming towards green energy, we have solar panel lights installed at selected vintage points, and our hostels are all provided with solar water heaters. And thankfully, we have just, ACs very few ACs that are installed in laboratories, those that require them. And when it comes to the teaching learning practice, as a Catholic institution, in all our endeavors, when it comes to teaching, we are committed to play our roles as stewards of the environment, where we instill the ecological education as highlighted by Laudato Si, which is an encyclical by Pope Francis. And just recently, we have come up with having a program known as the Service Learning Program, wherein we will try to encourage our students and faculty to serve to learn and to learn to serve, which is a program wherein students can be encouraged, both students and faculty can be encouraged to sort of participate very actively in service activities. And besides that, we have a very active research wing, which is represented by the Innovation Institution Council, the IIC, and we also have a team of very dedicated professors who have come up with a program known as CURE, the course-based undergraduate research experience. So these are the research wings which try to encourage the students to come up with ideas and of course, supervised by the faculty, so as to tackle, to identify problems and to tackle them through research. So
Wonderful.
I think, yeah, this is all, Sugit.
Thanks a lot. It's wonderful to see that this, all of this is actually also being taken forward into your education, which is involving students as well. Dr. Sandesh, I think, is he here now?
Yes. Am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible. I think you can just tell, maybe you can just answer now that how do you think your students have also, I mean, how have you been able to inculcate some of these things into your education as well? Basically, what is the, are there any specific projects in which the students are involved to help them understand the interlinkages between sustainability and campus infrastructure?
Okay.
And we just request to keep it a little brief.
First of all,
but, yeah, cover it all.
Okay. First of all, I would like to convey my thanks to Professor Nisar Khan and other people over here for making a part of this particular panel discussion. So, see, cause we are having a course like MSc in Disaster Management and Climate Sustainability Studies. Sustainability. In the 4th semester, we have a provision of our dissertation and a project. In that, what we do, we to work on harvesting and then recycling waste.
Dr. Sandesh, I think your voice is absolutely completely gone. I think it's not being clear.
Such a project.
Sandesh, what I can ask you, if possible, you can just type your answers, because it's the voice is not clear and it keeps breaking up.
Okay, I'm sorry for that. I'm really sorry.
So I think you can type your answer till then, and I'll just read it out once you do. Till then, I think Sakshi can sort of take over and ask if there are any questions from the audience.
Yeah, sure. So while Dr. Yadav is typing in his response to these questions, if anybody would like to ask Sugit anything, or if you would have any contact questions for our panelists, you're most welcome to do that. You can either type in the chat box or you can unmute yourself and ask. Do we have any questions? Okay, I don't see any responses in the chat box. So
Anybody would like to just unmute themselves and ask anything, any questions they have about the presentation, anything they would like to share?
Sir, good evening.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah.
Sir.
Hello.
Yeah, I'll just let Rajshri speak first.
Yes.
Rajshri, if
Thank you.
could.
Thank you, Sugit sir. Really, your session was very wonderful. And Being a resource person, I have learned a lot from you today. But apart from this, sir, whatever you have pictures which you have shown of the slums areas and the other areas, like we don't have these areas in our locality.
Mhm.
But we have lots of greenery in our school, and not only in schools, sir, apart from there, outside also, we have very greenery part. So, and we have even created some herbal gardens in our school with the help of the students of class 4th to class 8th. We are always using herbal teas and other things with the students. This is the wonderful thing which I have created in my institution.
Wonderful, wonderful to know that.
Now, sir, my question is, nowadays, many buildings are needing this ramp. Ramp is required in all the CBSE schools.
Yeah.
So for that construction, if again we will start rebuilding and reconstructing the things, then lots of pollution and other things will create the problem for everyone.
I believe the reason you need to create ramps is for somebody who is physically disabled, and I think that's non-negotiable. I think your entire campus, every single classroom should be able to be friendly for somebody who has a wheelchair. And there are multiple ways you can do it. You can also use elevators for that to happen. But I think that's something that's non-negotiable in any case.
Sugit, Dr. Yadav has responded in the chat box, so we can perhaps get on with the panel discussion.
Oh, yeah. So Mr. Sandesh has answered, we do have provision of dissertation and internship at the master's level. During their internship and dissertation, we encourage them to select topics so as to understand the interlinkages between sustainability and campus infrastructure. Topics like building audit, provision of recycling and waste, recycling of waste at the campus, provision of water harvesting, etc. So that's absolutely wonderful to know that how this is penetrating right into the education system as well, and that's something we would love to know more about, how students are responding to it if they're able to take this away through education. That's wonderful, because we really believe that it needs to be a mass movement. We can just take some of these sessions, but it's really campuses, it's really the educators like you who really have to take this forward. So any more questions? So Mr. Janardhan has asked, what's the one small thing practice which will make a big difference in greening campus? Good question. I'll let you answer that for yourself. Every single campus has a very different story, is very different. You know, in a place which has a lot of trees, perhaps 2 trees will not make a huge difference. It's a small campus in the middle of Mumbai. You put 4 trees in the campus and it makes a big difference to people just being able to enjoy the shade, buildings enjoying the shade of the tree. So there is no correct or simple answer to this question, but I would really encourage every campus to find out what is the most relevant that they feel they can do.
I think if there are no more questions, we can close the session here. Do we have any other question? We can perhaps take one last question.
Any feedback?
Hi, Sugit.
Hi,
I had just posted a question in the chat box. If
okay, let me, I was trying to, what are your suggestions for treatment of water from science laboratories? Now,
yes.
the very wrong person to answer that question, because on a general scale, I know, but you would, what your laboratory produces and what kind of water comes, it will have to be treated according to the specific guidelines for that. For what is really coming out, I don't really know what's coming out of your campus, and only a technically I'm pretty sure there would be guidelines for specific ways such as yours that are coming out. Perhaps you need to refer to them. Wouldn't be able to answer such a question like that.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right. I think that was the last question for today's session. Thank you so much, Sugeet, for such a wonderful presentation, for clarifying the basics of what a green campus means. And thank you to all of our panel members who joined and gave in their inputs to the discussion. So we're now coming to the end of today's session. This was part 2 of our ongoing series, and part 3, as I mentioned, will be held in August. So I look forward to seeing all of you in the next session. The link to register for the GEN network as well as for the GEN newsletter is there in your chat box. So you can go fill out the form and be a part of the GEN network so that you receive updates about our upcoming sessions. Once again, I'd like to thank Sugeet, Dr. Nisar, Dr. Sandesh, and Dr. Mibari for joining us today. Thanks a lot. Thank you to all the participants, and we look forward to seeing you in the next session. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, everyone.